Welcome to Women Talks. I'm Ana Spain. As we step into spring, a season of growth and renewal, is the perfect time to reflect on self-love and self-care. Our guest today, Kris Soebroto, is here to share her journey with us. Kris, welcome.
It's so lovely to be here, Anna.
Kris, you made a bold decision to change the course of your life. Tell us about that journey and how it transformed the way you practice self-love and self-care.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I have to start by saying that I've had multiple careers throughout my life. And in all of them, I worked my way up. I learned pretty early on that I learn best when I'm embodying the work, when I'm just doing it. So that would mean I would start from scratch and learn on the job. So, over the decades, I've been a builder and woodworker. I've been a massage therapist. My first step into the nonprofit world was as a cook. And then over the course of a decade, I became the executive director. And so all of those things, I was really led by curiosity and just a comfort with sort of doing things the hard way. I really love that characteristic about myself, that I can set a goal and just stay the course and reach that. But I think the flip side of that is that I really thought that doing things the hard way, really earning it, gave me the most fulfillment and sense of accomplishment. And a few years ago, I was at a crossroads and a new question just came into my head. And it was, what if I choose ease? What if the journey doesn't actually have to be so hard for it to be fruitful and valuable and valid? And, for me, it's not about turning away from hard things, but it's about, not measuring my self-worth with sort of how hard I worked. And so that's sort of when I decided to make a plan to leave my career and live on the road and house sit and see what could happen. And I'm not a caregiver of kids or loved ones. So the risk I carried in sort of making that big transition just, would affect me. And so I felt safe doing that. And I think that was an important detail of me being able to do this.
Was that easy? Was that this getting to that moment when you made that decision? How long did it take you to get to say, I need to make a change? Like, was that an easy transition for you?
No, no. I mean, I think it was very much driven by just like being incredibly burnt out, right? Just like giving so much of myself and not really having the capacity to continue to fill myself up. And I think so much of my identity was wrapped up in the work I was doing, the way I was just such a hard worker, that to actually step out of it was really, really hard. And I don't do things spontaneously. So, this was sort of years of planning and plotting. And all I knew was that I just wanted to create some space in my life for the first time in a long time, just some breathing room to actually see what comes in, right? When we create that space. And as it turns out, I found that I really love to create art and to use my art as storytelling and to use that storytelling as a way to connect with other people. And so that's what I'm doing with my time. I'm spending my time doing art. I'm able to travel more. And I think one of the most significant pieces is that, I left home. I grew up in Indonesia. I left home when I was 17. And I've never lived near my family since then. And because I'm not, tied to 2 to 3 weeks annual leave, PTO, I'm able to spend, long stretches of time with my family. And I think at this point in my life and the life of my, where my father is, it's just so priceless to be able to have that freedom to be with family.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, and that's where you are right now.
That's where I am right now. Yeah, it's really amazing. But yeah, as you asked, it was was the decision, how was it? I think another thing that was really difficult about it, I just kept having this question of whether it was enough to answer to my own whims, and follow my passions. Like, do I even have a right to do that? Is it okay for me to just plan, the trajectory of the next couple of decades based on what brings me joy? And spoiler alert, yeah, I think the answer is yes, but it's complicated, right? Like I was, raised by a British mother and an Indonesian father. And my mother was definitely raised in a culture where it was really about sort of keeping up appearances, what will the neighbors think, a culture of sort of accommodating other people's comfort at the expense of our own. And so,
And
something, yeah.
I,
And
I'm sorry that I was going to interrupt you, but I think that a lot of women, we are taught to conform, right? Like be a good girl, be smile, always, help others or care for others or put others first.
yeah, yeah. And that was really what it felt like, right? Like I didn't want to make other people uncomfortable. So I had to be small, And so something that was used against me, in anger and frustration was that I was told that I was selfish. And as a, very stubborn little girl and then not so little girl, I just had such a defiance against that word. I mean, it hurt, of course. And also, I just like it just didn't make sense for me. I think I've just always believed that there's a way to center ourselves and take care of
Yeah.
ourselves, but also to also be kind and generous, right? Those are not exclusive of each other. And yeah, I think like you said, right? So like, as people who are socialized as female, being selfish is just really weaponized against us. But I just don't think it's a bad word. I believe in relationships we can like take care of ourselves, know ourselves really well, and then know how we can be there for other people. And I just want us to have, I want myself to have more choices about where my love and my labor goes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I think that one thing that you've always been in touch with yourself, and you've developed an awareness of where you are in life, how you feel, and have made decisions based on that awareness, because sometimes we're going so fast.
Mhm.
And for example, in my case, I have two children. Now they're not so little, but when they were little, it was intense, and sometimes you're just like in the grind, and you don't even have time to just take a breath and look around and make those conscious, being aware and being very conscious of the decisions that we make. And I really applaud to the fact that you were in touch with yourself, and that you knew that something didn't feel right, and you were making decisions based on that. You were making plans to address that, not to just assume that, oh, that's the way it is, but
Mhm.
but something doesn't feel right and I want to change it. And in along those lines, can you give us some practical ways we can begin practicing self-love today? Because I think it's a journey, as you mentioned, but since you've gone through that, and can you share some of the insights, where how can we start applying that in ourselves today?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think about self-love and self-care, as separate things that are really essential to each other. And so the way I think about self-love, it's for me, it's sort of being in a deep, intimate, curious relationship with myself. So much the same way we're in relationships with our partners and loved ones and friends. Like I feel like I'm in a relationship like that with myself. So for me, it's sort of the way I spend time in my own company. It's the way I talk to myself. It's the way I take time to figure out what I need. It's the way I listen to myself. And, I genuinely enjoy hanging out with myself, right? I'll take myself out on a hike, on a date. And it's just another relationship in my life that I'm cultivating. And then when I think about self-care, for me, that's the way that I signal to myself that I love me. So again, much the same way we do nice things for people in our lives, I do those things for myself. It became really clear a few years ago. I was going through a big loss. A big loss. I was pretty shattered, and just sort of going through the motions of getting through each day. And fortunately, very early on in that loss, I made the decision to just continue to signal to myself that I was going to take care of myself. And for me, that meant I was going to cook for myself. I was going to try to eat things that made me feel good. I was going to get rest. I was going to see my friends. I was going to move my body and run. And I didn't feel like doing any of those things, but I just sort of kept at it. And, I think about it sort of as like a friend who shows up with soup and chocolate, every Friday night, even though you're not in the mood, but, they're there. And I think it just was like such a big turning point for me, right? That definitely I leaned on a lot of friends, and a lot of people held me through that time. But it was so important to know that I held me through that time, that I wasn't gonna abandon myself or turn away from the grief. And I think I came out of that realizing just sort of how unconditional my own love is, and my own relationship with myself is. Um, and
I
I think,
love that.
yeah, I've loved sort of landing on that, and on like understanding um, just how essential it is, and makes me continue to work on it, and you ask sort of how do we do it? How do we cultivate it? And, for me, it starts with curiosity. I just turned 50 years old. And so my friends, my family, myself, like, I have a lot of assumptions about like who I am and how I make my decisions and how I move through the world. But I've been so delighted by the ways that I have done things differently, right? That I'm not just one way, that I continue to surprise myself by making decisions I never would have made before, or feeling brave in different ways. And, that comes at a time in my life where I also feel really, really grounded in who I am. And so I think curiosity in any relationship, especially the one with ourselves, is just so important. And yeah, I mean, I think it's thinking about like what's one thing we could do to signal love and care, to ourselves. One thing that I do, I'm going to pause because someone's knocking. Dad, I'm on the phone. I'm on the phone. I'm in a meeting. My brother. Is that gonna work?
Yeah, we can cut and we
Okay.
can start right now.
Okay. All right. So where was I? Yeah, and so I think for as far as like how, perhaps thinking about how we can signal love and care to ourselves. One thing that I do every year on my birthday, and also at other milestones in my life, is I write myself letters. So on my birthday, I write myself 2 letters. The first letter I write to myself, to the me a year from now. And that one's sort of full of like my hopes and dreams and my fears, just like writing into the unknown of the future. The other letter I write, which can be so much more tender, is the letter I write to myself a year in the past. And that letter is sort of the letter of like, wow, Kris, you didn't know that was going to happen, but you got through it. Or my goodness, how amazing you like accomplished this thing, right? So both those letters are really sweet. It's words of like hope and my dreams and forgiveness. And I think they're just an incredible way to stay in a relationship with myself. Like I feel like I'm in conversation with myself by
Yes.
and so that's just maybe one way to have that sort of tender, loving voice, that we show to our children and our loved ones, to really direct it to ourselves.
Yes. And that's a great, I mean, it's so easy sometimes to do it for others, but then when it comes down to do it for ourselves, it becomes a challenge, or we just don't even make the room and the space and the time to think about it. But I think that's a very, very easy way to say, like, what are the things that we do for others, and how can I show love to myself? I think all of the things that you've shared with us are just amazing insights into, like, just starting today, starting with a small decision to be aware, to show our love to ourselves, and just to take a step closer towards that. um in your case, it was you had to make some radical decisions, um and you had the freedom, and I think it's amazing that you have that, and that you've been able to accomplish all of those dreams. And also just the advice, and to just start with little today, like, towards that path, can help us as well. I thank you so much for being with us today, and for
Thank you.
sharing your story, your journey, and some of the things that you've learned along the way. Thank you so much, Kris.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really sweet to share.
Likewise. And for more ideas on how to practice self-love and care, visit womenforchangecoalition.org. Thank you for joining us.